Ok, quiero saludar a toda la gente que está
I
online
wanted to
conectada.
extend my greetings to everyone
A todos los
joining us
speakers y
online,
todas las
all the
discusiones que podamos
speakers,
tener
all
acá.
the discussions
Espero que la
that
gente que
we're
está
going
en
to have
nuestro Zoom, la
here.
gente
I
que nos está
hope
viendo en
that
streaming por
those
YouTube,
joining
se
us
sientan
over
parte
Zoom or
de
YouTube
este día que
feel like
no es
you
solo
are
un
part
evento,
of
es
this
mucho
day.
más
It's
que un
not
evento.
just an event, it
Es la
goes far
posibilidad
beyond
de que
that.
colectivamente
It is the
podamos
possibility
transformar la vida
that
de las
together
personas a
we
través de la
can
tecnología y la
transform
transparencia.
people's lives through technology
Para
and transparency.
for the people who are and do not speak Spanish, you can activate the simultaneous translation as well in the Zoom. Ok. De transformar las vidas. Me voy a presentar muy brevemente.
Okay, I will introduce myself. I'm Paulette Sonmont. I am a journalist with nearly 20 years of experience talking about public policy, corruption. I have focused on transparency.
Entonces, tengo sumamente claro desde mi trabajo y desde el impacto que veo que cuando la gente trabaja
Experience and the
colaborativamente,
impact I've seen that when people work collaboratively, every line of code can have an impact and transform people's lives. Every policy decision to encourage transparency can lead to citizen action, and those who engage in transparency can have an impact. I'm very pleased to extend my welcome to all of you to TechSprint for greater government transparency. We're going to learn about digital tools. We have teams of sprinters, they're delegates who have worked a month and a half to develop prototypes of solutions that can help and solve problems. They have included civil society, the public sector. We have an excellent first class jury. I will first play a video that we have prepared to get today started.
El gasto público es fundamental para nuestras comunidades.
Public spending is key for our communities since it finances health and education, infrastructure, citizen safety projects. However, often the allocation and use of public funds come up against challenges when it comes to transparency and accountability. And this means the public do not have access to necessary services. They undermine trust, but we have a great partner to help us with transparency in government technology. Digital tools have the potential to transform public spending management, detect anomalies, and inform the public and hold institutions accountable to ensure that every cent spent meets its objective. Welcome to TechSprint for greater government transparency, organized jointly among the Inter-American Development Bank, the Alliance for Innovative Regulation, with the support of the U.S. Department of State. This event is an example of global collaboration that brings together visionaries, creatives, and innovative individuals to develop solutions that promote transparency and accountability in Latin America and the Caribbean. The regional investment of the IDB, the investment map, shows how bringing together technology and efficiency can make public spending more efficiency, reducing at the same time the risk of corruption. Today, we want you to help us to innovate and strengthen this work. Your mission is to be bold thinkers and create prototypes that address specific challenges in terms of transparency and accessibility to information on public spending, to work in collaboration, to make the most of different perspectives and abilities. Try to develop solutions that are innovative, practical, scalable, and highly impactful. Together, we can mark the beginning of a new era of transparency, ensuring that all citizens in Latin America and the Caribbean can benefit from honest and effective governance. And this way, we will have a tangible impact one step at a time.
¡Bravo! Ok, me gustaría que lo
I
pasemos bien hoy
would
también, ¿ok?
also like us to have a
No
good
solo
time
como
today,
formalidad y tal, necesitamos
not just with all the
inspirarnos, necesitamos
formalities.
recordar
We need to
más adelante este
inspire
evento
one
como algo
another
que
beyond
disfrutamos.
this event. We
Así
want
que
to
nada,
enjoy
tenemos que aplaudir un
ourselves.
montón durante.
So I'm going to be asking you to
Voy a
applaud
cambiar a inglés.
very often today. I'm going to
You see
switch to
there the
English.
logo of the Alliance for Innovative Regulation. They have been amazing. Without them, it would have been impossible to have this TechSprint and be here. So I want to invite part of the core team, please, to this stage, because they're going to give us an introduction of the TechSprint highlights. Please, would you like to? Hey, yeah, thank you. Okay. So here you have Mike. It's really funny that you sat down in a completely different order from there. But you can see Mike there. He's a program director for the Alliance for Innovative Regulation. We call it AIR. You see here Denise Rudich as well. Maybe you can wave so they see you. Perfect. She has more than 20 years implementing financial crime prevention, although she looks very young. Anti-money laundering and anti-corruption policies in the banking and public sectors. And now here she serves as the program management lead at AIR. And you have Carol Alaski. Yes, that's right. She is a technical program manager at AIR with an extensive background in the data and technology space across private and public sectors. She is the youngest, I would say, and super creative, super smart with technology, and with a big call to really make AIR mission a reality, and also this TechSprint. So you have a microphone there. Please tell us, what are the TechSprint highlights?
Good morning. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the Alliance for Innovative Regulation. Really proud to be standing alongside my amazing colleagues, Denise Rudich, Carol Alaski. It's been a pleasure to work with you all this time. It's also been our pleasure to work closely with the IDB and to receive the support and guidance of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs to produce this TechSprint. I'd like to extend a special thank you to the IDB, the Institutions for Development Sector, and the Innovation and Citizen Services Division for hosting this demo week and demo day at IDB's beautiful headquarters. Along with your shared vision and all of the collaboration throughout this year leading up to today. So many months ago, all of this was merely a vision, and it's taken the tireless efforts of too many to list to make this a reality. But for that, we at AIR are completely grateful for all of those efforts to be here today. Yeah, we're also grateful for the opportunity to work with such great organizations and support your efforts to reduce corruption, increase public transparency and accountability, and ultimately meet the best interests of citizens. So at their heart, TechSprints are about gathering stakeholders with diverse backgrounds and perspectives to work toward a common goal and solve complex problems, albeit in a competitive setting, as we'll see later today. The common goals of this TechSprint are clear: to leverage technology to tangibly and positively impact public transparency and anti-corruption efforts in investment project financing, with the hopes of immediate impact through investment map platforms in Latin America and the Caribbean. I'd like to thank each of our participants for joining us, including those of you who have traveled from far away, as well as all of our experts who have served in the user and tester roles and provided so much support over the last several weeks. We thank you for working toward these shared goals with us and all of the opportunities we've enjoyed to share learnings with and engage with you in our short time together. So since July 15th, TechSprint participants have worked on teams and in a virtual setting to produce solutions and prototypes to address each of 5 problem statements Today, all of these efforts will culminate in presentations delivered by team delegates who have joined us in person and online, presented to a panel of judges to showcase their work, and the award and recognition category winners will be determined. So I'd like to reiterate that regardless of today's outcomes, we hope that you have found this experience to be enlightening, worthwhile, and that it will continue to contribute to your work in increasing transparency and reducing corruption in the future. So with that, it's my pleasure to pass to my colleague Carol to tell us a bit about the participants and organizers' journey through this TechSprint.
Thank you, Mike. So, Investment is a platform that's been evolving for over a decade, spanning over 14 countries across Latin America and the Caribbean. The TechSprint was a chance to pause and reflect on areas of improvement that can scale up this platform and have even more of an impact. So 5 key areas were identified, and those were defined and refined through roundtable discussions that were hosted with government representatives, NGOs, and civil society organizations who are ultimately the end users of this platform. So following the human-centered design principles, we put ourselves in the participants' shoes and thought about how best to make the data accessible and digestible to a technical audience that may or may not have had previous exposure to public spending data. And so the result was a custom data platform that we built with a curated set of project, budget, project, and contract data from across the various countries. This was complete with proper documentation, data documentation including metadata, data cataloging, and the definitions. So with that, I just want to pause and thank the IDB technical team, Angela, David, Jorge, Jaime, Jose, Vladimiro, Luis, and so many more behind the scenes, too many to name. Honestly, without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to make this work. And so the investment map platform was also made public on GitHub to foster a strong open source dev community that the foundations were built here in this TechSprint. Another thank you to the Datopian team for their expertise and support in building out this custom data portal as well. So on top of the curated data set, we also had detailed guides that would walk the tech sprinters through the problem statement of choice, also the current state of the solution and the future vision that we had, and the external resources that maybe we thought would be relevant to them. So the TechSprint itself took place virtually over 6 weeks following the rapid prototype development process. Weekly Scrum meetings were held on Mondays and Fridays. So Mondays, the goal was to set the milestone for the week, and Fridays to review the progress and provide feedback. Also critical to this process were the user testers that were providing feedback to the teams through one-on-one meetings, and also providing their expertise and real-world experience in anti-corruption and transparency in weekly teach-ins. So for that, I'm very grateful, and I thank you for your time. This brings us to the final stage here today, Demo Day. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be working with these teams throughout this journey. And in a relatively short period of time, you've been able to truly innovate and push this platform forward. I leave here inspired, so I thank you for that. And you're all winners to me. I wish you the best of luck today. And with that, I'll hand it off to Denise to share some highlights.
Thank you, Carol. You're winners to all of us, I think, not just Carol. So I am here to talk to you a little bit more about the amazing level of participation. If we can put up the slides, please. We have an infographic. What's a presentation without an infographic? Here we go. Really to talk about the amazing level of participation and diverse backgrounds that made up this TechSprint. And that benefited this initiative overall, alongside the spirit of collaboration and cooperation and openness, which are all things that you want to hear about when you're talking in an anti-corruption sense. I think that we'll start by highlighting that we received a totally unprecedented level of interest in the TechSprint, and I'll talk about the numbers later. And this is just not just from across the region, but beyond. I come to you from London, England, but we have people from as far away as Peru, Chile. We have Panama, Paraguay, Bahamas, Bolivia, Mexico. I was born in Mexico. So really from across the region, 19 countries, three continents, which is really fantastic. This was also a cross-sectoral initiative. So we had people from academia, from investigative journalist backgrounds. Paulette, I'm not sure if she's mentioned that already or not. Of course, this is an international organization, so the public sector. And we also had private enterprise coming in and giving some of their resources, sharing their knowledge, their intelligence, and whatnot. We had two categories of participants. So we had, or individuals who took part in the TechSprints, because it can be a little bit confusing. We had participants. So these are the individuals, 9 of whom are here today, or 8 of whom are here today, who basically set up teams and built out the prototypes. They spent countless hours sharing their knowledge, their skills, their background, and again, their resources. We have front, back-end developers, UX, UI, technologists, data scientists, statisticians, mathematicians. Like, it really is quite extraordinary, the level of talent that was brought forward. And we also had users, testers. So these are individuals, I'm going to share a little secret. I started my TechSprint career as a user tester equivalent. So sharing knowledge, experience, expertise in the world of anti-corruption, open governance, data and transparency, and the like, to really help the teams put together their prototypes, refine their prototypes, and hopefully make things a little bit more user-friendly and accessible with regards to Mapping Inversiones. And actually, a lot of these had used Mapping Inversiones previously and incorporated them into their countries. Shout out to Roxana Masola from Argentina, who actually implemented this. All of the user testers were fantastic. Next slide, please. Oh, look, it's there already. So like I mentioned, we had an unprecedented level of interest. We had 589 applicants. So yes, we did go through all of those and refine that down to 80 participants. So again, the people who built the teams, the 20 user testers, the individuals who again gave their knowledge, experience, backgrounds, etc. And some of them were quite robust in how they provided feedback to the teams as well. 8 teams, which means that we also had 8 delegates. So we had 8 people who are going to be presenting 9 prototypes today. And Carol already talked about the Scrum meetings and whatnot. We also had a lot of speaking sessions, teach-ins, so people could learn about anti-corruption and good governance and transparency. So again, it was a knowledge sharing bridge that was built. And I wanted to highlight the fact that we had more than 30% female participation, because in ICT, normally in Latin America, you get 8 to 18% of women working in ICT, so information and communications technology. So this was my highlight, the fact that there is an evolution, we're making progress, and IDB and AIR and State Department INL have actually supported this kind of ESG initiative as well. So I'm going to stop talking. I have been told, stop, you're at 0 minutes. But thank you, everybody. Good luck to all of the teams. Thank you to our judges as well, who have also come from across the region. They will be introduced later. Thank you to Paulette, Juan Cruz, Paula, everybody involved. And just because I didn't name you doesn't mean that you're not in my heart. And thank you to our fearless leader, who is kind and generous, Mike, as well.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's a really incredible, the participation that we've had. Also, there are over 200 people connected at the moment as well, online. So I hope all is well there. And now we're going to have a conversation on good governance and institution for development impact. And I do hope it's a conversation. And I do hope that you are involved and engaged. So I'm going to ask you to ask questions to our panelists, okay? Paula Costa, please come to the stage. Under a big clap. She's the Division Chief for Innovation for Citizen Services at the IDB. She has over 25 years of experience across various sectors, and she has held prominent governmental roles, including Vice Minister of Finance, Deputy Director of the National Planning Department, and Vice Minister of Social Security at the Ministry of Health in Colombia. Her experience leading institutional reforms and multisectoral programs has been instrumental in fostering high-performance teams. And she has also served on various boards and taught at the Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. So thank you, Paula. And I want to invite Robert Leventhal. We can call him Rob, I think. He serves as division chief at the U.S. State Department Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, Office of Global Programs and Policy. Robert has had a key role in the development of U.S. government policy on international anti-corruption efforts, coordinating the U.S. government participation in a wide range of multilateral anti-corruption initiatives and managing support for projects to promote good governance. Among many other accomplishments, he has co-chaired the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. So I'm gonna, where is the clapping for, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna sit with you guys because I would like to guide a little bit this conversation. And my first question is to you, Robert. Tell me, why are you here?
Okay. Bueno, para empezar en español, en primer
Well,
lugar,
let me
quiero
switch to Spanish.
agradecer a
First
la
off, I'd like to
for
thank
for
the
Innovation and
Alliance for
Regulation,
Innovation and Regulation
por llevar adelante esta iniciativa y
for
por organizar este evento.
driving forward this initiative and for organizing this event. And also, I would like to thank the IDV for their deep collaboration. They're always a pleasure to work with. And I would also like to thank and congratulate each one of the teams for their work, for their creativity, and for their drive. For me, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Having said that, I'm going to switch to English, which is my mother tongue. By the way, that was really impressive, wasn't it? I feel more comfortable speaking English, especially when it comes to such an important topic to us.
And before I say anything else, note to file, please help me out whether it's a tech solution or not. Time to change that photo, but we'll talk about that later. So, thank you. So look, at the risk of stating the obvious, for the State Department, for the U.S. government, promotion of respect for rights, promotion of rule of law, of good governance, the fight against corruption are core missions. So much so that President Biden made fighting corruption a core national security priority for the first time for our government a couple of years ago. At the State Department and in the INL Bureau where I work, our mission focuses on working with other countries. You know, of course, we're a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we're not justice, but working with other countries to create standards, strengthen standards in their implementation, to improve international cooperation, to build capacity to protect not only U.S. citizens, but stakeholders around the world from the impact of crime. And for us, anti-corruption is a very, very high priority. Now, again, we're International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. So from our name, you can see that a lot of the focus is on criminal justice systems and institutions. And that's important. But you know, there's an old saying in English, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I would amend that to say an ounce of prevention, of good governance, of transparency is worth a pound of enforcement. And so we recognize and we invest in, and we're glad to partner with organizations like AIR and like the BID on innovative approaches within the criminal justice system, but beyond the criminal justice system, to look at how can we harness approaches like the use of technology, digital tools, how can we harness new partnerships, including with the private sector, to better achieve our goals. And that's why this kind of initiative and this effort and the kind of outcomes that I think everyone will be hearing about over the course of the day are so important to us.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer to why you are here. And Paula, maybe you can explain to us some of the IDB's work and like focus maybe on impact. What's the impact on the Latin America and the Caribbean region?
Sure, put it. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the people that's following us online. There are hundreds of people that are watching this event. And I think that's a very good indicator of how important this topic is for a bunch of people that works towards strengthening around the region. And I'm going to start there because we have this mandate in this bank that is we're working to improve lives, right? And when you have that sort of mandate, you have to really think through on how to do it. And the way in which we are organizing in our countries, in our democracies, is through institutions, right? Institutions are in charge of providing services, are in charge of providing goods to people to improve their lives. And I want to go there because Robert was mentioning this aim to fight corruption, right? And when you see any election around the region and probably around the world, there's always a claim on fighting corruption, right? But the other side of that claim is that every citizen wants their money to be well spent. And to improve the efficiency of spending the public resources, you have to have institutions that are like the machines that we have to provide those services that work in a good way and that work efficiently. And that's what we do here, you know, and that's one of the mandates that we have within this division and within this bank, is to help the governments tune their institutions, tune their machines to provide the best services possible in the most effective way. And this particular initiative that the TechSprint works with, that is Mapa Inversiones, and there are many more. But Mapa Inversiones is a very simple idea that the great merit is that it saw the day of the, it saw the light of the day. It is something that everyone can use and that everyone can relate in a way, not in the most efficient way. And this is one of the reasons why we have all of the different people from different areas trying to improve this initiative. But the main idea is that if you're able to see how the money, the public expenditure is spent, then you will have a benefit in terms of efficiency and in terms of transparency. And that has happened, you know? There's some good news. There are studies where it shows that when a project, it is mapped on that map, it has an increment on the execution and it has an increment on the results that the money has in that project. So this bank has the mandate to improve lives, and one way to improve lives is the way in which the governments work with the public money to provide services and goods. And this is one of the reasons why this particular initiative is important, because it is so largely dispersed throughout the region, right? There are 14 countries. There are millions and millions of US dollars that are reported in that particular platform. There are hundreds and thousands of projects that you can check and that will change people's lives. There are roads, there are schools, there are, I don't know, any sort of programs and projects that are changing people's lives that you can track through this kind of initiative. So that's one of the reasons why this is so important to us.
Paula, I'm going to be a bit critical here. I work as a consultant as well here, right? Training journalists on how to use investment map. And one thing I've seen is that transparency is not enough, right? Like the disclosure of information is not enough. And you're absolutely right on the impact it has when people use this information. I see it after the workshops we organize, the number of stories that are published, and it's not just about corruption, but also about what projects work. And that is great for people to take good decisions, right? Like, oh, in which neighborhood I'm going to live to send my kid to a good school or whatever. So if disclosure of information is not enough, what needs to happen so that transparency has actual impact? Any of you?
So thank you very much for the good question. So look, I'd argue that transparency has some intrinsic value, and it has some, let's say, instrumentalist value, some outcomes that it, at least potentially, it triggers. But you don't get to the outcomes automatically. So increasing the transparency, making information more free, again, I think is a worthwhile goal in and of itself. But to turn that into, whether it's reform, whether it's informed decision making, whether it's enforcement where there is abuse, you need external stakeholders who are equipped to use the information, who can access it, who can package it, who can transmit it in a compelling and impactful way. And you need officials, whether they're enforcement or policymakers, who are open to drawing upon that resource. And neither of those two factors are always there. So whether that's a matter of cultural change, whether it's a matter of intergovernmental or engagement through international organization frameworks, whether it's a matter of capacity building, we have to, even as we invest in transparency, we have to invest, and I don't necessarily mean financially, that may be part of it, but in terms of attention, in terms of support for those other elements.
I think that there is a key part where you have to make the information relevant to the people, right? Like in a normal life, you go to your work and then you come back home and then you have to cook dinner, right? And then you spend some time with your kids. And then usually people watch cat videos, right? Cat videos are like super trendy and are like super important. And you expect a citizen to take some time, not to watch cat videos, but to go to Mapa Inversiones, you know? And that only happens if that information is really relevant to that person, right? If they're expecting a bridge to be built and it has been overdue, probably they will start looking for that kind of information, right? If they see something that does not match up in a project to which their kids go to school, probably they will go to Mapa Inversiones and look for that information, right? So the first part is to make the information available. But the second part, no, the first part is to make it relevant. The second is to make it available. And the third one is to make it easy to understand, right? And to give it some context. Maps give context in terms of location. But you have to go one step forward, and I really expect that this TechSprint give us more insights on how to do it, to make that information ready to be used by a person, by a citizen that wants to engage in that activity of doing like civilian surveillance. I don't know how you call it, like social control. Probably it's a better way to put it. So you have to make it relevant and you have to make it easy. And technology allows for a bunch of those things to happen with minimum cost in terms of time and in terms of expenditure for that person. If that person has to go to a major office and request some additional information, probably that will never happen, right? But if they can open up that information in their cell phones, that's most likely going to happen. In Colombia, where all of this story started, we started with the royalty system. And the last figure that I have is that 80% of the claims and the processes that are open to look for corruption within the royalty systems comes from citizens' claims. So this basic idea really works. And we have to make it even easier for citizens to be able to engage in this kind of civil control or civil surveillance.
If I can just add, in the sense of the conversation, and at the risk of introducing another cliche, I mean, we all work in our sort of sectoral silos. And so breaking down the silos so that when organizations, when citizens, when others come forward with the information, officials are open to receiving it and acting is hard, and it's not always present. And I want to share a story about a friend in the UK who used to work for the famous, Scotland Yard, the Met Police. And I would say that from the way he relates it, when he worked there, he, paraphrasing, but let's say poo-pooed the ability of NGOs to do investigations or kind of do the hardcore stuff that he and his colleagues did at the Met Police. And then he retired and he joined an NGO, which I won't name, that does very detailed, very sophisticated open source intelligence investigations of kleptocracy and of humanitarian abuses, and then reports on that and shares that with authorities. And when he got inside that door, he said, these guys are using super sophisticated tools, in some cases better than what we used at the Met Police. I wish I had known. I wish I had reached out. I wish I had a better sense, so we could have collaborated more. So we have to wait, not wait till we retire, but kind of get that mindset and see how we can foster more collaboration, more openness to kind of cross-sectoral work.
It's really amazing you're mentioning collaboration, because also journalists, investigative journalists, if we wouldn't collaborate, many things wouldn't come out there. And what we hear from, for example, public officials is kind of the same, like, oh, we wish we could collaborate across borders the way you journalists do. And that it's all through public information, right? And it's really relevant what you were mentioning about these like stages that need to happen in order to make information be impactful in people's lives, because that is exactly what it's at the core of the problem statements that we've posted in this TechSprint, that we didn't make them, right? Like just the IDB or AIR. This was built with different stakeholders, and they go through like the core of what you said, like the quality of information, how, for example, we can introduce artificial intelligence so that people can relate to this information in a natural way, a natural language. Many times I go to give a workshop and I say, okay, let's find out how much the government's spending in the Panama Metro, for example, whatever. And then they actually use the search bar and they write, how much has the government been? I mean, I'm like, no, it's not going to work like that. So this TechSprint is building those solutions, the teams that are here. But we know that technology also can carry certain risks. For example, artificial intelligence is known for reproducing certain biases. So what risks do you identify and what can we do about it?
Robert.
That's because whatever I say, Paula can then make deeper and more intelligent. So I think some of the risks are well recognized. As you increase approaches that gather more information in potentially more opaque ways, even if your intentions are very positive, you risk diminishing privacy concerns. You risk tools that can be destined for sort of public benefit, but used for repression. And it's really difficult because I think at the cutting edge of technology, including in AI, we're not even fully cognizant of what the risks may be. We have some general senses, but the proof will be in the pudding. So I think we're really, and I'm not sure if I have any advice about how to avoid it, but I think we're really feeling our way. Perhaps the best thing we can do is be cognizant of the risks and look at points where we can try to build in safeguards. But it's difficult. There's an understandable rush to adopt new technological solutions in this area and many other sectors. There are desires to do things more efficiently, and sometimes without a strong sense of what the unforeseen ramifications may be.
Complementing Robert. My main concern is about how these kind of technologies can actually increase the gaps that are already in place. To be able to use in artificial intelligence, you have to have some basics, to use it properly, to have certain abilities, to be trained in certain way, to ask the right questions, and to be able to discriminate on what information it's actually good information, what answers make sense, and what doesn't make sense. It is really easy to use, right? But it's really difficult to differentiate whether a complex answer makes sense or not. And I think that not everyone has those basic abilities. And I know that there is a bunch of work in the ethics of artificial intelligence, but I think that from the perspective that we have in this bank, we have to be really aware of the risks that there are in terms of enlarging those gaps for the people that has access to that kind of technology and the people that will be users without the proper training.
Absolutely. There is this say that the head thinks from where the feet are standing. And it seems that everyone who works in technology, journalism, organized civil society is standing from kind of the same place, like we are the elite. So we tried in a way to save that gap in this TechSprint, but not with every citizen, but like between people who work in technology and people who use the information. So we had this user testers group that I want to say hi to, because they were critical. They work with the teams to help them design the solutions in a way that people could use it better. I want to know if there are questions from the audience, or I just want questions from the audience. I don't know if we have any question online. I left my phone here. No one wants to ask any questions. Thank you very much. So I'm going to come to you. Then you can say your name. You're a sprinter, I know. And then your question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm a sprinter from the Caribbean. I just wanted to follow up, Paula, if you could give kind of an example or a little bit more insight of the gaps that you want us to have caution with that may expand with AI or the like.
Sure. I think that, for example, since it's so easy to create content, right, using AI, the precision or the ability to verify those contents is limited, right? And one of my concerns is that there is a bunch of misinformation going around, and that this kind of technology can replicate and can produce tons of contents that replicates misinformation, for example. And you have to have some background to be able to differentiate whether that information is legit information or if is misinformation. So that's one of the examples. The access itself to the technology can also create a gap. The proper way of using it, right? So those kind of things. Thank you for the question.
We have several questions actually online. So I'm just going to read one and then I'll pass it on to you. I'm going to read two. It says, how can we participate when chat is disabled? How can civil society input to the data of anti-corruption? Thank you, Gail Mohamed Oxley, for that question. And then we have, how do we increase uptake of these tools by citizens and government officials, especially in developing countries where many persons are tech averse? That's a question from Deline Powell.
So I think I'll dive in on this on the second question. Look, I think things have to evolve. So one point I want to make is that any new approach on these issues has to take into account sort of the organic whole, the system in which it's gonna operate. It means that you have to be very sensitive to local context, and that even as we're impatient for change. And I'm thinking back to really very inspiring framing that Paula did at the beginning. Even though we're thirsty for ever more rapid advancement, ever more rapid protection of the interests that Paula was outlining, that for many important changes, it needs to take time. And I'm reminded of an example, a project that we did a few years ago, where we were looking at the problem set of the return, what's called return of stolen assets. So where there are proceeds of corruption from a given country that are then somehow stowed abroad. There's increasing international collaboration to identify where the money has gone, to freeze it and confiscate it, and in many cases return it. But we had interest in some technological approaches to increasing the transparency and accountability of the return. So we worked with a partner to develop a blockchain approach that would allow some multi-stakeholder oversight to the monies that would be returned and prevent, as in the kind of quaint British phrase, the re-corruption of the assets. And so I think it was a pretty nifty product, but we found, and I'm just across the street actually, is the asset forfeiture and money laundering section of the DOJ, but it was really hard to find the right case to pilot the use of that blockchain on, in part because you needed counterparts that were had kind of the technological base to use it. You needed political will, so a country needed to accept that as part of the return. You needed the right size for a pilot. So we had this great, what we thought was a great, theoretically, technological solution, but some of the other conditions weren't yet there. So we've got it. We're ready to go. We can, talk about whether there are other cases we can look at it and try to roll it out. But I'll say again, the context is very important, and in some cases it really takes time to get the uptake.
So the question was about how to use or how to encourage the civil society participation when there is not that easy to make a denounce, or and I think that this particular tool does not solve the whole problem, right? It just provides some information to make easier and more accessible the capacity of authorities, but also to citizens to denounce that something is not working properly. I think that is something that we need to tackle, because we should be able to make that easier, right? But I think that there are also other ways that the society has and other institutions that also can do a lot. And Paulette was mentioning the media. And I think that that's a tremendous, powerful institution to try to make things to work in a different way. And the people that has served knows that when there's something in the newspapers, usually public officials pay more attention to what's going on, and also authorities. So I think that that's another way to try to use that information for the public good.
Absolutely. And just want to tell the people online that Investment Map has also a participation tool where you can send comments that the authority reads. And we have the last question. They told me 0 minute, but just like 1 minute. 1 minute. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Rob, my question is the following, from the State Department perspective. We live in a representative democracy. And I think corruption contributed on the disbelief and distrust that people has in on our democracies. So what we are doing, and how do you see open government to be an answer to improve the quality of democracy, to make it, to make people feel that they are really being part of this or represented? Thank you.
So 30 seconds for the answer? No.
They're going to kill me if not.
Yeah. So thank you. Good to see you. look, it's a multifaceted answer. I think open government approaches are premised on the message of the value of citizen engagement and the impact of oversight of external bodies. I think individual, access to better information about governmental decision making can facilitate, and there are obviously other important factors. We think of different kinds of accountability, whether it's accountability through the criminal justice system, otherwise, but electoral accountability. There are specific tools like and even technicians for getting better public awareness of the performance of their parliamentarians. For example, attendance records, online voting records, declaration of assets. But it is a big challenge. I mean, your question didn't focus so much on the challenge, but in a world where we see a lot of democratic backsliding, in a world where corruption is certainly not the only issue, but corruption diminishes the resilience of liberal democracy, as you say, creates a sense of distrust or disenfranchisement, and I think you risk both a sort of negative spiral of distrust, disengagement, poor performance, et cetera, but then also vulnerability from external actors who want to take advantage of those weaknesses to exert influence and perpetuate the system.
I want 3 words from you as the key takeaways of this session or this day. Just 3 words or 1 sentence.
I think that one is collaboration, right? The other one is you're building a regional public good. That's what we're doing here. So let's give it the best.
I will say innovate, collaborate, and animo.
Big clap, please. Thank you so much. That was amazing. You can take your seat. My pleasure. Okay, I know you might be tired or thinking a lot, so I'm going to give you literally 45 seconds. If you want to go get a coffee, grab a coffee, you can bring it back, because now we're going to have an amazing keynote speaker. Alex, do you want to join me? Do you want 5 minutes? Okay. You do have 2 minutes to grab a coffee. Only 2 minutes. Alex will be here waiting for you. You do? My family is from Concepcion. Oh, nice. So I go there a lot. My mom lives there. I didn't know you had it there. Yeah. Why there? Your co-founder lives there? No. No. Well, one of the yeah. Okay. With that. And so brilliant. That's amazing. So it really builds organic. That's really cool. You guys, then at a castle. Yes. I was there. Oh, you were. I was there. Okay. Yeah. That's amazing. I actually wasn't. Ok, ok. Ahora me van a colgar si no regresan. Por favor, vuelvan a la sala.
I'm going to get
Everyone
shot if you
back,
don't come back
please.
on time, so get back here.
Everyone back. Guille, help me here. Michelle, help me out. Oh, are you leaving? Oh, yeah. It was a pleasure. I know.
Didn't get a chance to introduce myself. Anyway, you did a great job up here.
Thank you very much.
Really interesting to hear what you were saying.
Thanks.
Come back, come back, come back. Romina, help me. Jose, help me. We have a keynote speaker now. Ain't that exciting? It's going to be like a TED Talk kind of format. So do please come back. Otherwise, I won't be able to give you breaks anymore. I see the judges here. Really good. Thank you so much. Sebastián Del Hoyo, I need you here. Guillermo Lagarda. José Niño. Okay, thank you. I'll be the boss for these 5 seconds. Everyone back. Okay. Thank you to the people online who are waiting for us. I'm going to give a brief introduction because I think the most important thing are the projects that he's going to show. But I want to introduce you to Alex Simos. He's the co-founder and chief technology officer from DataWheel. He's a computer scientist with more than a decade of experience data vision and distribution projects, including OEC.world, DataUSA.io, DataMexico.org, and many, many others. He has a master's in media arts and science from MIT. So, Alex, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. First, just want to say thank you to all the organizers.
Wait a minute. Where is the clap?
Yeah.
We have over 200 people online watching, so let's give him some support here as well.
Great, thanks.
Go, Alex.
Great. So my name's Alex. As the introduction that was given, I'm CTO here at DataWheel. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the projects that we've created throughout the region, throughout the world even. And I'm also going to spend the second half talking about AI, and specifically about what I'm calling the AI journey, going from data to automation. So first, I want to sort of introduce you to the company and some of the projects that we do. So the company was started by myself, Cesar Hidalgo, and Dave Landry. And we came together around the core mission of trying to democratize data. And I know that's a core mission that's shared by a lot of people in this room here. But really what we were trying to do is build tools to make that happen. And specifically build tools to allow decision makers, to allow policymakers to really utilize that data in that process. So we've built a team. We're now just about 30 people. We're based throughout the world. There's folks in France, there's folks in Argentina, in Chile. We have folks in the US. There's actually someone here, Gilberto Garcia in the back, based in DC. And myself, I'm in Cambridge, where our office started, close connection to MIT. That's sort of how we got started. So we have a really brilliant team, and we've done a number of projects throughout the region. So throughout Latin America, throughout the US, throughout Europe even, and in the Middle East as well. So I'm really proud of all of these different projects. And if you go to our website, you can browse them. Many of them are public, many of them are open, and you can check them out there. But on top of that, what I'm really proud of is the impact that a lot of these projects have had. We've won a number of awards. We've won an Indigo Award, a German Design Award, and we've won 2 Webbies, one for Data Africa and another for Data USA. And so at this point, you may be asking yourself, well, what are these data platforms? And specifically, how do these differ from the open data portals or open data platforms that exist or that are out there that maybe some of you have used already? And so to illustrate this and to give an example, I like to start with data.gov. And this is a website produced by the US government. Maybe some of you have used it. And honestly, it's a really brilliant resource. It's great. I like the design. They redesigned this recently. but it does fall flat in a few key areas. And I want to illustrate that, and I want to show how this maybe differs for some of the platforms that we're creating. So a typical user journey here, someone comes to the platform, you see there's almost 300,000 data sets that are available. Say someone is searching for something like income, and they're presented with a list of data sets. In this case, there's over 2,000 different data sets that are here, some from the Census Bureau, some of them from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, maybe some of them from the Department of Transportation. So all different data sets from a number of different institutions throughout the US. And that's sort of where your user journey ends. You're presented with all of these different files, you're presented with all of these different resources, and it's up to you as the user to then figure out how to use them. And if you want to include multiple files, if you're trying to make some sort of argument or some sort of campaign using this data, it's up to you to either use Excel or program or figure out in a technical way how to merge all of these different data sets. And for that reason, we like to say that there are sort of two different paradigms. One of them is thinking about these platforms as thinking about them using the paradigm of data as files. And in this case, similar to data.gov, they're presenting you with all of these different files. And again, these could come from a number of different resources, could come from a number of different departments and bureaus throughout the US. And then again, that's your responsibility to sort of use them and figure out what is the underlying entities or what are the underlying variables that are within these data sets. And the way we're trying to change this, and what some of the platforms we're doing, is we're trying to really integrate this data and change that paradigm to think of this as data as stories, and think of these as core components to the underlying story or the compelling arguments that you're trying to make as a user, as a data user or a data producer. So in this case, what we do is we open up all of these different data sets, we figure out which ones we want to integrate, we open them up, we try to see what are the entities that are in here, what are the different variables. So in the case of Data USA, or in the case of building a platform for a specific location, some of those entities might be geographies. In the case of the US, that might be Los Angeles, that might be DC, that might be Boston. There could be industries, there could be occupations. These are what we like to call the entities. And then the variables are all the different metrics that describe those entities. And from there, what we try to do is build these stories. And we have a few different names. Sometimes we call them profiles, sometimes we call them automated reports. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to build are these different stories that are indexed and that are marked by these different topics like the economy, different opportunities, health, and housing. So to illustrate this and to give a little example, I'm going to show you a short demo video of Data USA. And again, this is a pre-recorded video, so I'm going to try to narrate as it's going along. So forgive me if I lag a little bit here. So a typical user journey, someone comes here and they search in the toolbar. They're searching now for an entity. In this case, we're looking at Raleigh, North Carolina. And you start to see what some of, oops. Let me go back here. Oop. Can you go back one slide for me? Seems like the clicker isn't working. Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'll know that for the future. Don't make any mistakes. So, okay, again, typical user journey. Someone comes to the platform. They search something like Raleigh, North Carolina. They're presented with some statistics. They're presented with some text about the particular entity that they searched. And as they scroll down, they start to see all different sections about these topics. And they're understanding the story that's being used or that's being built from the data. So for a user, it doesn't matter if that data is coming from the Department of Transportation, it's coming from the Census Bureau, it's coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It doesn't matter for them because they're able to see all of this data in context. Anyway, there's a number of sections. As you scroll down, you start to see some follow-up reports or profiles here. And in this case, we show relevant ones. So for example, someone coming from Raleigh might be interested in the county. So they click on Durham County, and you see there's another report. It's going to follow the same structure, but it's driven by the underlying data. From here, we could even jump to a different profile or a different automated report type. In this case, going to a university. Duke University is in that same county. And from here, we can even compare them, because another thing and another piece of feedback a lot of users have given us is, okay, it's great to see one of these profiles about one entity. What about if I want to compare them specifically side by side? here's a user comparing Duke University with the University of North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill. They're able to see all of that data in context. They're able to compare side by side, see all of these visualizations. And we don't hide any of this data. So instead of just showing or giving pointers to the files, we're unpacking all of that, but we do provide the user the ability to download this data, to download the visualizations themselves if they want to put this into a presentation or anything like that. And we have a number of different profile types, specifically for Data USA. I had shown the geography, the university. We also have them for industries, for occupations, and for academic majors as well. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop talking about these automated reports, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And here I'm actually going to talk about data and AI. And a few years ago, when all of these different LLMs started coming onto the scene, ChatGPT, people became familiar with the idea of AI, and everyone was asking us, well, what are you doing with AI? How are you augmenting the platforms you're building using AI? And so we took this very seriously, and we've been working on a number of different initiatives. But first, I want to talk about an experience I had about 6 months in San Francisco. I started seeing these autonomous vehicles. I started seeing these Waymo cars everywhere. Anyone that's been to San Francisco, you've probably seen these. And honestly, it was the first time in a while that I've had that really awe-inspired feeling for technology. Working in technology myself, you kind of become accustomed to the incremental advances that you see, but this was just something, it felt like I was living in the future. You hail one of these cars, it shows up, there's no driver whatsoever, and you get in, you can control the music, you have. So I took this video to my dad, he was blown away, and the first thing he said was it safe? Did you feel safe in there? And honestly, I didn't even think of that. I was just so blown away by the technology. But it was safe, got us to our destination. It was great. But the reason I wanted to talk about this, the reason I wanted to show this example is that when we think about the way we encounter AI, we're thinking about it from the consumer perspective. We're thinking about it from the perspective of a user. I hailed this car. I got a ride from the origin to my destination. It was seamless. It was incredible. But really under the hood, there's a number of different AI systems that are going on. And really what we call this autonomous vehicle is the connective tissue that's connecting all of these different systems. So there's object detection, there's guidance systems that are going on, there's control systems. All of these need to talk to each other. And that's the real power of AI that's going on. When you look back, it seems obvious. It seems, well, yeah, just use AI. Let's get rid of the driver. It seems very obvious. But to do that, to actually build these systems together, that is something that takes iteration and that takes a lot of time. And so what I'm going to present is our journey, and I'm going to present some of the pitfalls that we've faced in trying to incorporate AI into our platforms. So when we start thinking about AI and when our clients were talking to us, it felt somewhat obvious to us. We thought, well, we've already integrated all of this data. We've built all of these profiles, like I mentioned previously. So let's just slap ChatGPT on there. Let's just slap one of those LLMs in there. Great, we'll load up all of our data, and piece of cake. End of the story. Turns out it wasn't quite that easy to do that. And we fell into a little bit of a trap, a little bit of that bias of when you first encounter technology, you don't really have the sensitivity and understanding for how complex it is and how complex of a problem it was. And I don't need to enumerate all of these different risks, all of the different problems. Some of the largest companies, Fortune 500, trillion-dollar companies, have run into these epic fails that many of you have seen and that have been publicized. So we've seen these. And if those large companies are stumbling, of course, we were having some of the same issues internally within our company. So we were thinking, okay, well, maybe the issue is the technology itself. Maybe it's just not smart enough. Maybe that initial version of GPT-3 that we were using, the AI is not powerful enough, and we need to wait for the next version. Okay, almost every week there's a new model that's being released. No problem. GPT-4 comes out, we try that. Still not quite working. We tried Mistral, we tried Meta's Llama, we tried Anthropic's version, the Google version. We tried all of them, and they were all failing, but they were all failing in different ways. We were getting very heterogeneous results. So it was very confusing for us. And that's where we realized, and again, it feels obvious thinking back, we needed a framework. We needed to figure out why they were failing, and we needed to do that specific to our data, specific to the questions that we were trying to answer with our data sets. So in that case, and again, this is a overly simplified version that you're seeing here. Basically what we came up with was an evaluation framework. The questions that you're seeing here, this is based on the OEC, the platform that was mentioned in my introduction. I didn't give a demo of it, but basically it's based on international trade data, exports and imports of products. So some of the questions we wanted to answer were, what were Brazil's exports in 2020? What was the growth in exports, in imports for Chile over the past 5 years? Some bilateral questions like how much coffee does Ethiopia export to the EU? Somewhat complex questions for an LLM to answer. So we developed this framework, and what we realized were they were all failing. They were all failing in slightly different ways, but there was one way that they were all failing consistently, and that was with math. They weren't great at using this data. They weren't great at putting numbers together and providing reliable, consistent answers. And that makes sense. They're large language models. They're not large math models. They're not specifically built for doing arithmetic. We had to change how we were thinking. We had to change how we were thinking about this problem. And that's where I stepped back, and that's why I wanted to start the presentation, or this half of the presentation, with that autonomous vehicle. We needed to think more in the idea of systems. We needed to think about the connective tissue and how we could break these questions down into their component parts, into their individual parts. So what we did here, and what you can kind of see, I know that the font and text is probably too small to read, but basically what's going on here and what we ended up doing for the solutions we built was breaking down these questions that users were asking and building individual AI components that we could then build the connective tissue just using code, using regular code to connect to them, harnessing the power of these different LLMs, these different AI models, get them talking together, and then be able to produce results. So finally, we got something we were happy with. This is a very early prototype, but we were actually getting results. So the question here, again, probably the font is too small. Someone's asking, how much copper did Chile export between 2020 and 2022? Again, not a super complex question, but you realize that, okay, there are 2 years here, there's a specific entity, we're talking about copper, we're talking about Chile, and we're able to get results, we're even able to get a data table that comes out of it. All right, smooth sailing, we just have to keep refining this. The problem was, it took forever. It took almost 5 minutes sometimes to get answers out of this. So what we realized was in building these more complex systems, it was slowing us down. It was slowing down the results that we were getting. So we had to go back to the drawing board a little bit here, and we realized there was this trade-off, that there was a speed and accuracy component, that when you had that simple wrapper, you were getting results super fast. That's great, but they weren't the right results. When you build these complex systems, you were getting the right results, but it was taking a really long time. Luckily, the field was growing so fast. There are new academic papers being published, every week. It seems like there are all different techniques that are out there. There's fine-tuning, RAG mini models. I'm not going to enumerate all of them, but luckily we're able to refine our approach enough to finally get our speed down and also to increase our accuracy to get something that we're a lot happier with now. So really the lesson here, and I'm concluding, but basically what we were thinking, where we started was thinking that let's build a monolithic model, let's use AI, we've already integrated our data, allow users to ask questions, run that through the data wheel model, it's going to be fantastic, produce answers. But really what we were building was this. We were building that connective tissue, and that was the most important part in us achieving the results that we were looking for. We needed to do that data selection, we needed to find out what table we needed to figure out if there was arithmetic. Sometimes we're asking questions about growth numbers, you can't store growth. You can't do the combination of the growth of every country for every product. You can't store that in a database. That needs to be done after you've retrieved the data. There are different sequences that need to happen. So we realized that really it was that connective tissue, and that's what we were building. So brief examples here, and again, I'm wrapping up. These are prototypes, but I'll promise you that there is actually code that's written. These are, in fact, real demos, but I'm just showing some screenshots here. So for the OEC, that tool that I had mentioned previously, we're asking how much coffee did Colombia export to the US, Chile, Argentina between 2010 and 2015? This is sort of what we were calling the kitchen sink question, where we were asking multiple entities, in this case bilateral or trilateral. We're asking for coffee, we're asking about Colombia, we're asking about US, Chile, and Argentina, but we need to treat them as a single entity because we want to know bilateral between Colombia and all these other countries. We're also asking for data between multiple years. There were a number of different ways that we needed to break down this problem, and we're able to get results. In this case, we're showing a table here, and if you scroll down, we're also building a visualization. And again, very crude. We're continuing to refine these. We also built a solution for Data USA. In this case, the solution needed to be even more complex because here we're not just considering a single data set, which is exports and imports, but there are a number of different data sets, like I mentioned previously. There's data about CPI numbers, about inflation. There's data about housing, about jobs, about industries, occupations. So we need to take all of that into account. So one of the hardest things here was actually doing that data selection. Once a user asks a question, really figuring out which table has the data we're looking for, where do we need to go, and then bring that into the model, figure out what's the arithmetic, how do we process that data, how do we present that to the user, both in form that you're seeing there, there's an actual prose answer there, and then underneath the data table, and then if you keep scrolling further, the visualizations themselves. So it took us a long journey, and I wanted to show you all of this because there were many pitfalls along the way. I know a lot of you here are builders. I know some of you are even presenting solutions based on AI and LLMs. So I'm hoping this can help you. There are sort of 4 lessons in summary that I wanted to mention. One is integration. The first step before you can really do anything is integrate your data. If your data is in Excel files, in databases, whatever it is, you need to integrate that data. You need to harmonize it. You need to figure out what your entities are. Systems versus monoliths. Think of that connective tissue. Think of how you're going to connect these different LLMs, these different AI procedures you're building to eventually build the system that your users will interact with. Performance. I can't stress this enough. It's great to have something running locally on your laptop, but as soon as you get that online, as soon as you have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, millions of users, you really need to consider performance. And then lastly, testing. Figure out what are the questions your users are going to be asking, what is the testing framework, how are you going to be answering those, and how can you do that with the highest degree of accuracy. So with that, I'm just going to conclude. I'll say thanks to everyone here. If you have a minute, shameless plug, check out Tradle. If you don't know, it's a fun game. It takes 30 seconds. You can figure out which products there. Thank you.
Was amazing and so inspiring, and I guess you have so many questions, but I want to invite you, Alex, to the stage actually, because now we're going to have a conversation with the judges, and he's a judge, so you can also use the space for it. This will be moderated by Irene Arias Hoffman. I'm going to change to Spanish for a bit. Ella es la CEO de BitLab, el laboratorio de innovación.
She is the IDB Lab CEO, which makes the most of financing, knowledge, and connection to support early stage entrepreneurship, foster the development of new technologies, activate innovative markets, and catalyze existing sectors. And then we have Juan Pablo Guerrero. Thank you for being here. He is a senior governance specialist at the World Bank focused on anti-corruption and integrity as part of the public administration global governance unit with 30 years of experience in governance and institutional change. He has dedicated his career to reforming and strengthening governance systems while combating corruption at a global scale. A round of applause, please. Then we have Praveen Mandal. Praveen is is the CTO of Builders DC. She's also an MIT Connection Science Fellow and MIT Media Lab Research Affiliate, which focuses on artificial intelligence. Please, a round of applause for Praveen. And then we have Giannina Romero, and she is the program manager for Latin America and the Caribbean at the National Democratic Institute, NDI. She holds a master's degree in law from Columbia University, a master's degree in Latin American Studies, Government and Human Rights from Georgetown University. A round of applause. And then Johanna Lishnik. Joanna is from OCP. I will give the floor to Irene to get started with our conversation. You are going to be doing this in English?
Or in Spanish.
Yes or no? Or in Spanish. Whichever.
You can do it half in English, half in Spanish. Alex, I encourage you to use it. Anyways. English is fine.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. Thank you to Juan and to all the organizing team for making this day, this TechSprint overall, and this demo day happen. And it's particularly exciting because, as you know, with through IDB Lab as the innovation and venture capital arm of the IDB Group, we work directly with entrepreneurs like Alex, but many founders across the region who are every day coming up with potential solutions that can really tackle differently the challenge that is at the center of the discussion today, which is how to improve transparency, integrity, how to improve institutions overall. And so having this space where these two parts of looking at it from the public side and looking at it from the entrepreneur side and making it easier for both sides to work together is just really great to see. And that's one of the reasons why the TechSprint is so useful, is that it brings together different worlds that normally do not work so easily together. So I have the honor of introducing the members of the jury, and congratulations, by the way, to all of the companies that have been selected for, or the teams that have been selected and will be part of this demo. So I'm going to introduce a little bit each of them, although you already got a sense of where each of them comes from, and ask a question to each of you to start the conversation and better understand how to frame and how to look at the factors that I think are going to define the decisions of this jury. And you have a great responsibility of assessing not just the technical application and feasibility, but also how, in the country context, these solutions can be effectively implemented. So we're going to start with Juan. Juan Pablo Guerrero, who has a very distinguished career in governance and transparency and open government, currently at the World Bank, but before, I believe, in the government of Mexico and also in civil society. And we've heard a lot the word, including this morning, on collaboration across different actors to promote transparency. Beyond what's your take on the importance of collaboration? How much is it, because it's also costly, so how much is it a myth and how much is a necessity and an important factor in achieving success? in bringing effective solutions here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for making me part of this very interesting event that brings some of the elements on which I have been working all my life, and that is the provision of relevant information with the tools to make it useful, and with the emphasis of engaging the public. One area in which I believe there hasn't been enough emphasis is on not only citizen or people engagement, but actually on a participative framework that empowers citizens. And this is a very good example where this opportunity is giving, because you really provide information that allows participants to think, to innovate, to look at the issues from different perspectives and really bring to the table solutions. And that is a virtual circle that I very much appreciate. I won't elaborate. We could talk about this for a long time, but I'm very pleased, I'm honored, and I'm really looking forward to today's session to know more about the great possibilities that people bring to these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. And by towards the end, we will come back to you as well, so that you can give some recommendations to the teams. I wanted to ask Joanna. So you come from the side of building solutions. Some of you do, and in your case from Paraguay, and in your case doing the head of data support and open contracting partnership solutions for transparency in contracting data and improving procurement transparency in procurement. So tell us a little bit more about that, and also in terms of the importance of working on standard setting and international standard setting in terms of making what you do more impactful.
Can you hear me? Yes. So thank you very much, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And that's a very good question, because of course we can say that transparency is important. We can start publishing more data, but then we don't need just any data. We, like with any luck, we will want to have like structured data that we can use more easily to build our tools, because of course you can start publishing, and in public procurement, you can publish PDF documents, you can publish like a scanned image of contracts. And of course, we now have some great AI tools that can help us to process that information. But if you like not only publish that, but you have like structured data in a standardized format, and then it's much more for tools to use that, to reuse that, to build incredible tools that then help you with specific problems. So that's why it is super important to not only think about transparency and say, yes, you should start publishing whatever you have, but start thinking on the data that you are collecting, like how are you collecting this data? Which fields are the most important ones? What questions, what fields you need to ask for, like in public procurement, but in any area actually, and then you can start publishing that in a meaningful way for users and tools. So at Open Contracting Partnership, we have a standard for publishing public procurement information that is called the Open Contracting Data Standard, OCDS. So we help governments to publish their public procurement info in that format. And actually the investment map use that data to connect like contracting with investment projects, which is great. But of course, data and structured data is just one part of the thing. And And you also need that data to be quality data, and standardizing is one part of trying to make that data more quality, or like having more higher quality. But the other point is the point is like the actual data that is there, like if this data makes sense or not. And then, so that's the other part. And then, of course, the other part is some things that Paula was referring to in the previous session, for example, on making this data relevant for the users, and then also accessible and everything. And I think the latest part of using data, building tools, is also to make sure that, like, when citizens are participating, when citizens have, like, start using the data, something will happen. Like, if they start complaining about something, then the institutions will do something about that. Otherwise, I won't trust an institution if I know that if I complain about something, nothing will happen. Because in Paraguay, for example, we are, like, we normally say that we are transparently corrupt because we publish everything, but we are still corrupt. And we know that, for example, if I complain today, nobody is going to go to jail for something. Like, even if I complain, even if I have proof, then our institutions are so weak that probably nothing will happen. So we need to work on, like, publishing data, transparency, tools, making accessible to everyone. Of course, like, collaboration is important, and then the final part is about, like, having stronger institutions as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Joanna. I think that's really useful in terms of thinking not just the what but the how, and ultimately in terms of how. I mean, well, we're gonna turn to Praveen, who through all the ventures that you've successfully created, and including, I guess, in clean energy, but things that are also related to this field. Tell us in terms of how you build impactful solutions, some of the challenges that you've faced and some things that you could recommend, and specifically in terms of achieving scale. Thanks.
All right. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I think, like, on the ideas that I saw that was being, I think Michael sent around is what it is, a summary. I go back to what Alex is doing with Data Wheel, who Alex, I knew about, I think Caesar, right? Spinning out of MIT Media Lab about 7-8 years ago, just at the onset of this. But the storytelling is really important, right? I mean, we're talking about all this opening up the data set and transparency, which is step one, I think, as someone was saying, right? But then being able to tell that user story in an easy and digestible way, and maybe minimizing the behavior change, right? Like, if they're used to seeing things in Facebook or TikTok, is there a way of integrating, right, into those channels that they are used to interacting with, right? So this is what we talked about in some of my other ventures, and even currently with drug manufacturing, which is a different issue, but is try and minimize the behavior change as much as you can, right? And storytelling is important. I'll pause there. I don't know if that answers it.
Maybe just to elaborate a bit more in terms of us. So again, here we have an interesting intersection between actions that the public sector has to take, actions that entities that are in the middle can do in terms of promoting transparency and availability of data, but also how to link it to companies that are willing to take a risk, entrepreneurs that are willing to take a risk to offer services to government to help them improve in those areas. Some of these, we call them GovTech, companies that are in the business of the services for governments to digitize, for example. And we have here Miguel Porrua, who backs a lot of operations of the IDB that helps governments modernize and digitize services. So in terms of some of the companies in the ecosystem that are looking at this as an opportunity to tackle some of the needs, are there any recommendations that you have in terms of scaling the businesses successfully?
Well, I mean, okay, so I mean, I come from Silicon Valley, right, San Francisco. The narrative always there is product market fit, right? Obviously, Alex, you're going through that right now, right? So, and part of market fit that gets buried is this concept of inertia, right? So, beyond your first customer, whether it's government or whatever, how easy is it for other people to adopt your solution, and are they willing to adopt it, right? And that's inertia. It might be the best solution that saves money or drives whatever revenue, but if they're not willing to adopt it, it doesn't matter, right? So, and so that's part of the journey is beyond your first customer, in these Latin American countries, the government's going to be your first customer. Who else is going to adopt your solution? Why are they going to adopt it, right? And how do you, that's the scaling part is really what it is, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I guess that's
actually there's a running joke in Silicon Valley. I'll tell you this joke. One of my friends who's a CFO at a bunch of these companies, he goes, whenever he goes into these companies, like he typically goes into Series C round and later stages, if you will. He says what he's noticed is that the first 7 customers are the CEO's friends, okay? And they always turn over, right? So again, it helps them get started, but that's not the scaling part, if you will, right? So,
And okay, well, and I'm sure Alex will be able to complement that as well, and how to get those first customers on the government side is even more challenging. But I think that's partly what we can get going here. But we'll turn first to Janina. Janina, we heard earlier in the introduction, you are manager for Latin America and the Caribbean at the National Democratic Institute. And of course, a lot of experience, in particular in financial integrity and anti-money laundering. So, in terms of issues on democracy, citizen participation, how do you, at this point, what can be done more in terms of increasing citizen participation, which is a key in terms of getting maybe some behavioral changes, but that can generate demand for better government services as well, and it can be sort of a self-fulfilling or like a virtuous cycle. How do you get more citizen participation?
Thank you. That was a packed question. But first, I want to thank everyone that is here, everyone that's making an effort to make this possible, because we cannot forget that we're doing this for the citizens of Latin America and the Caribbean. This is an important job to be done, and we cannot just lose sight that we're here for the people. So I think from the National Democratic Institute, something that we have noticed as a constant throughout all of our implementation is the building capacity in the not all the countries have the same capacity. So that goes for governments, but that also goes for the citizens that are the ones that are going to be using this tool, hopefully. So I will say that as part of everything that we do, the first step is trying just to build capacity. How can we make this easier for them? How can we adapt it to their to their realities? Because we can also provide help to the government to do this, but we cannot just lose sight that they are, in my opinion, the main users.
Can you give us some example of things that you've seen have been successful?
Unfortunately, I work in closed societies, so but I can try to make a hypothetical. I guess that let's make that comparison of a closed society and an open society. And NDI is quite simple: is those who have the freedom to, voice their concerns, to demand to their governments or not. And when you're working with those big groups, the issues that you can actually help them implement or work with are quite different. For closed society are more bread and butter issues because they don't have the freedoms, the ability to demand more. So you always have to adapt your programs to what the citizens can do and still protecting their security. So how can we ensure that in a region that is so diverse, it is still the most unique region in the world, we're providing access to everyone?
Okay. Well, we'd be now, yes, going to Alex, who doesn't need an introduction since he did such a wonderful keynote to and gave us this insight about data wheel. But perhaps just to add your perspective here, in terms of linking it to the question I asked Praveen, what does it take for an entrepreneur to build essentially a GovTech venture, and what are some of the main challenges and to other funds? Again, like we're looking at it very much from the potential for IDB itself on the public side to benefit from a growing ecosystem of GovTech companies across the region that can be part of the solution. We're looking at it from IDB Lab as the funder for a lot of these ventures, and taking into account like what does it take to succeed, and you've clearly done an amazing has had an amazing journey, so we'd love to hear that.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a great question. I wanted to just react to a few things that some folks have said so far, something from Joanna and then something from Praveen. So something Joanna said very early on, which I couldn't agree with more, is firstly, the ability to structure data, provide open formats. So I actually really want to applaud your efforts there. And to us, that's the first step in any of the projects that we work on. It's understanding the data, really looking at those files, understanding what was the context in which that data was collected, and then how do we harmonize that? How do we get that to harmonize and work together with other data sets to provide context? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to make decisions with data. You need to have and understand that data in context. So I would love to put Data Wheel out of business in terms of that first step that we do. I would love to get rid of that integration step, have that already done, and be able to move on to the more exciting stuff, which is the things like distribution, the things like visualization, the things like automation, AI, data science, all of that. You need that solid foundation. And that is also a great way to ensure that you have quality data. The other thing I wanted to mention, something Praveen said, which was about meeting users where they were, about behavior, that these tools need to match the behavior that users are used to, especially when they're interacting on the web and when they're interacting with these tools. Something that we learned very early on in Data Wheel, and I would say is key to the success of these platforms we build, is that the initial version of the OEC, which is that first platform we did, was basically one giant dashboard. It was a one giant dashboard where you could find all the data. You needed to select the right dropdown. You needed to put in the right search box, and you would find what you were looking for. And users would come here. They would maybe try one example and say, okay, cool, move on to the next thing. But Silicon Valley, all of these websites, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they understood very early on, and again, because their incentives are aligned with advertising, that's where they make their money, is that by keeping people's attention, by keeping users' attention, you need to show them more content. They're not going to necessarily go and find it. So that's why when you're using YouTube or Netflix, they always queue up that next video for you. You don't even have to do it. That's going to come up. And for us, it's the same thing. It's that we have this data, we've integrated all of it. So really the paradigm of the web is scrolling. The paradigm is much more passive. So if you can unpack that data for users, if you can show all of that in context, that's a huge win already. And that's going to meet users where they are and again, the behavior that they expect on the web. So that's a huge win. But sorry, getting to your question, which you were asking for, which is to help fellow entrepreneurs and how you can really get started. I do subscribe to a little bit of that, utopianism, where thinking about how to solve problems, that we can solve all of these problems. And, I know that has its own issues. But I really do feel like building the right tools, trying to find those needs that are out there, whether they are government, public sector, or private sector, and really follow your passion, something that you yourself are interested in. If you really care about corruption, if you really care about transparency, you should go there. If you as a citizen notice some other issue or pitfall that is happening within your government, and you can think of a technical solution then follow that and really try to go as deep and narrow as you can on that. And then just in terms of making those connections and how you can find, because at the end of the day, you're building a business, so you need customers. Networking as much as possible, going to these tech sprints like you are all here today, applying yourself as much as you can, making those connections within the social network. At the end of the day, you end up seeing a lot of the same people, and it's a somewhat small community. So just participating as much as you can, whether that's virtually or physically, I think that's really the key to success.
Well, thank you. That was brilliant. Yeah, we have 2-3 minutes left, so probably not enough to go to everybody, but perhaps Juan, and if one or two of you want to have a final sort of recommendation or thought.
The final thought regards the particularity of the client we are talking about here. These are people that have rights. In all of our countries, fortunately, even when sometimes it's not exerted as one could wish, people have the right to know about what the government is doing. And actually, the government has the obligation to inform what it's doing with public resources, which belong to the people, no doubt about that. And so that's why the image here is less about clients, it's more about how do we ensure that that right can be exerted, and how do we inform in a way that is relevant, that is timely, that is accurate, and that addresses the demand. And this is something, and that's where I'm going to finish with, something that I really think MAPA Inversiones has been doing in a wonderful way. I say it from the former director of the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency, where we also used to have exercises of engaging the public to look at how public investments were made. But now I said, as an anti-corruption expert from the World Bank, this is a reference of a proactive effort to meet the demand where communities live. So this exercise is very important because it allows not only to address that demand, but in a way that is innovative and that can really take the best of that proactive effort. But to go back to the need of building capacities, this is an effort that needs to be proactive. There's never going to be a business to sustain it. It has to be paid by the taxpayer, and government needs to be constantly engaged.
So thank you, and thank you for that acknowledgement of the relevance of MAPA de Inversiones, certainly, and I think Alex and based on what Joanna said, there is a need for this kind of regional public good, no doubt, and many more companies could build on those foundations more easily other solutions if that's done. So that's thank you, Juan. And just when I saw you with the mic, so with the last 30 seconds.
I'll give a very Silicon Valley view again, but to piggyback on Alex about passion and everything, at the end of the day, what we always talk about with entrepreneurs is your job is in this journey is begging for money, whether it's for customers or investors, right? And they all tie together, right? So I'll leave it at that.
Well, so good luck to all the teams, and thank you, and thank you to the jury members and to our colleagues for putting this together.
Thank you to you for an excellent moderation. Thank you so much.